Want to be more thorough while also working faster? It doesn't matter if you're on the red or blue team, an augmented reality overlay can enable you to be more thorough and faster at the same time. No glasses, no goggles. Polarity delivers this superpower as an overlay on top of your existing workflow and tools. The free Community Edition connects to the data you care about to overlay the context you need to make informed decisions. Apply for early access today at securityweekly.com/polarity. Qualys has brought together vulnerability management and patch management, letting security teams discover vulnerabilities and apply patches immediately, all within a single, unified app. Sign up for a free trial of Qualys VMDR, vulnerability management, detection, and response today at securityweekly.com/Qualys. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. If you've got a specific guest or topic you'd like us to cover on one of the upcoming shows, submit your suggestions for guests at securityweekly.com/guest. Complete the form. We review those on a regular basis and are looking forward to getting your suggestions on the show. Also, if you missed Security Weekly Unlocked, you can access all of the content on demand, whether you registered or not. If you go to securityweekly.com/unlocked, you can log in and or register to consume all of the content. And now the security news for this week. I think maybe we'll start with the Exchange servers that need to be patched. Seems to be a good story to start with. I think most of us had kind of flagged that as a story of interest. What I thought was most interesting was I thought Security Boulevard, they do a pretty cool thing where like they take a story like this one that's pretty popular, a lot of people are talking about it, and they find a half a dozen or more different resources, and they kind of quote the more interesting things from the articles. And I think that's cool. Kind of those wish I thought of it kind of things. I mean, it's what we do, almost on the show, but in a kind of blog format. Let's see if I can find that in my stories, because I had a couple of quotes from that article that I thought was pretty cool, and I'm still...
It's the second story on your list.
Is it story number 2? Yes, thank you. So some suspect that this is a sneaky way to encourage customers to dump on-prem Exchange and use Office 365, as the rumor is that Microsoft learned of this vulnerability in February, January, months ago.
January.
They learned about it in January, but didn't release the patch until this week.
Yeah.
And I thought
it's not easy patch though.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, patching Exchange, is that ever really easy?
No, it's really not. The complexity of Exchange is insane.
Also, someone else commented in an article that was linked to from Security Boulevard that he says, all right, I just finished patching our server, started documenting at 9 a.m., had all the steps, and now it's midnight, only because I've never updated an Exchange server before, and nobody else that's left in IT knows how to do it. I thought that's why this is so critical. Yeah, I thought that was really telling. Right, I mean, that's why at the top of the show, I was like, hey, if you know how to patch an Exchange server, like, we need you, folks. We need you.
It might be a little contract money in that.
Right? It's a challenge to patch those things, and they're live production servers that everybody's going to scream about it when they go down, because there's people getting their email like right now, all hours, and the minute you take it down and you're looking at a whole bunch of steps and you're going, oh, man, and what if this fails, and what's the rollback, and
Hey, change is hard, and when change revolves around tens of thousands or more people who are relying on email, change is super hard. And you can't just be like, oh, we're on-prem Exchange. Like, well, we'll just go to Office 365. Like, that's not how it works.
No.
There's so much planning and work.
Like
I mean, if it was easy, there would be like, oh, yeah, there's a few more people left running Exchange because, going to Office 365 was easy. It's not.
Right.
No.
So I feel for people in this.
That's a long-term rollout plan.
Yeah, I feel for people in this.
Well, it's a bad week. I mean, it's a bad week for people because they're getting calls from now because of all these stories. They're getting calls. I mean, not that they shouldn't have been patching, but they're getting calls from CEO people saying, why are we patched? And they're going, well, the patch just came out. We've got a test, and it's the email server. It's not. We're not just talking about updating Chrome here. We're talking about Exchange server.
Yep. It's in our patch rotation that'll be 3 months from now. And
Well, and having full redundancy on your Exchange environment was also, from what and again, I wasn't the Exchange admin, but I was friends with the Exchange admins at Microsoft, and they were like, Yeah, because you make friends with those people, right?
Well, you better.
Right? I mean, those are people you want to be friends with, and they're awesome people for doing that work. And of course, it runs the gamut in skill set, but usually, if they're doing a good job maintaining Exchange, they know their shit.
Yeah.
And when the people that know their shit are going, have like a fully redundant Exchange environment, Paul, is like really hard. I'm like, dude, I believe you. Like, that's hard. It's
redundant
hard.
email is a nightmare. I mean, it's always been that way. And then we've always been asked that question. I remember being asked that question back in the 80s. People saying, can you do redundant stuff here? Can you mirror this server? And it's always been a challenge.
Because it's not just, it's multifaceted in that it could be your mail relays are in the mix, as well as your email retrieval and storage, as well as the multitude of ways in which people are checking their email, which could be web, which could be
plus
which
calendars.
could be POP, and then calendar. You're right, Tyler. Calendars. IMAP.
Web
all
conferencing, Teams integration for scheduling.
There's just a lot of moving parts.
Exchange is more a bunch of little communication applications all tied underneath a one seamless name, right?
Yep.
It's not just Exchange.
Yep. And then the other part of this course is the question was, are the Chinese in our system?
Yeah. Then you've got
probably now.
Well, yeah, I mean, they want to know, and so there's two pieces of this as you patch. Like, or do we clear this out? Is it going to be, is it going forward?
Oh man, the other question, Doug, I can relate to that. The other question I used to hate was, okay, so you say we're vulnerable. Has any data been lost? How the fuck am I supposed to know?
Just tell them it has, and that'll get them excited.
Yeah, just say yes.
Everything.
Give me money.
I mean, in this article, I mean, the title is Microsoft is incompetent. Is that a gross overstatement?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
I think it is. I think Microsoft is doing above and beyond to help.
I do not, and I'll go on record saying that I do not think Microsoft is incompetent. I mean, they put security front and center in their mission a long time ago, way before a lot of other vendors did.
I'll second that. I think Microsoft is cautious, is a term I might say, because and especially about something like Exchange Server, because they roll out a patch that fries everybody. They're going to have lawyers calling that afternoon.
That's right.
So and this is a big deal. I mean,
they've got the most lines of code to defend.
And you can show financial harm with this. If you say our email's down and it's down because your patch fried everything in our company and we want it fixed, what do we do now? And they want to be sure they can answer those questions. I mean, Cisco's like this too. They want to be sure they can answer the questions you're going to have before they give you the tool to screw it all up. And it's got
to be defensible. I mean, and you can't blame them because I mean they do have a large installed base, and there's a lot on the line.
Yeah,
Lee, you had some comments on your story number 3 on the specific attacks that China was executing against these vulnerabilities.
Oh yeah, was that my 3 or was that?
Yeah, your 3 is the HAFNIUM group. Is that the? I don't know where that term came from.
That's the name. That's the name of the APT.
Oh, that was my number 2.
HAFNIUM. That's what Microsoft calls them.
Lee, you're number 2 and number 3.
I can't count to 3 right now. I'm getting 1. Never mind.
And all right, bourbon is flowing.
No.
Freely.
It's okay, Lee. You're counting from 0.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh, well, in that case, we're good to go.
Problem solved.
Cheers, Joff.
So your story number 1 and number 2 if we're starting at 0.
Yeah, so they were saying that they're saying that the HAFNIUM group has been exploiting 4 different vulnerabilities that they found. I've got the vulnerability numbers in the notes.
Yep.
And that they're although they're a little bit wishy-washy whether it's really the Chinese HAFNIUM group or not. But what I saw was it is definitely a Chinese-based group going off and doing these active exploits. And in fact, the binding operational directive from DHS. The actions taken read just very similar to the actions taken after SolarWinds in terms of they want forensic capture of all machines that are running Exchange on premise in the government space.
Yep. Wow.
So that tells me we've got a fairly egregious threat here.
Yep.
See, one of the weird things though with this group was that the actions they took for such a, I mean, you're talking about $3 to $5 million worth of 0-day here, at a minimum. Mm-hmm. They took some steps after they gained access where they're just archiving mailboxes, where they're doing some loud credential dumping using procmon or procdump. So some kind of script kiddie kind of actions after they gained access. So one of the theories is that someone has actually done this, or someone has seen these activities and they've sold the kind of the idea off, or someone's weaponized them, and another group is taking over what to do with them. That, or there's very specific targets and they were after some specific information in mailboxes and just got caught, and so now they're just trying to maintain access because they were creating accounts and domain admins. They were, like I said, dumping creds. So some real kind of script kiddie moves with this level
maybe that's
of
a backstop, Tyler, because if I was planning some kind of campaign like this at this level, I would assume I'm going to get caught at some point, that it's going to get revealed that I'm doing it. So we do all this deep dive stuff, but we have a script ready to go. The minute we see we're going to get caught, you just run this one big script that says, do the simplest, fastest thing possible to get as much as we can, because we know we're busted now, and they're going to fix it.
Right.
So I'm gonna keep working it, but the minute that the alarm goes off, I'm just going to hit run, and I'm going to grab everything I can with script kiddie type stuff and just get out.
Yeah, I mean, or it could be they accomplished the original, more elite team accomplished their goals, and they're like, well, now what we got what we came here for. So now let's sell access off to some other group, or turn it over to the junior team and let them, cut their chops. See how long, let's groom the junior team. See how long it takes for them to get caught. And when they get caught, it doesn't matter because we know it's going to get burned anyway. But we accomplished, I totally believe, and this is totally, theory and not based in any fact whatsoever, that there is an initial objective that gets accomplished, and then they have decisions to make. Like, we could continue to be stealthy, but we already, got what we came here for.
You got in the safe, and you got the good stuff. Now, as you're running out the door, just grab everything you can on the countertop.
Right. It could be a number of things. Grab everything you can, pass it off to the junior team. Let's sell access to the North Koreans and let them do whatever they're going to do with it, because we're going to make some money. Let them get caught. So maybe it was the North Koreans originally. Then they sold off that access to China, and China was like, well, give it to the B team.
China's doing the original and saying, let the North Koreans get caught, so we'll give it to them and say, have fun, guys, we're out.
It paints a whole new light as to how hard attribution is.
Yeah, it is.
Right. Well, I still think we should have fun. We could have fun with talking to a group that's doing attribution for real, but we might wind up in a loop. I was thinking that the HAFNIUM group might have been the ones that wound up with the pre-broken systems. Well, the other guys weren't even noticed.
Yeah,
could be.
Yeah, but these vulnerabilities are really interesting. They're very specific in nature, right? Like, you've got an unauthenticated access or an RCE, and then you've got code execution and privesc, and essentially a combination of privilege escalation that allows you to do very specific actions. So, the ability to write files and get code execution all while unauthenticated from an initial vector, all three of those, it's like winning the lottery of 0 days against a very plethora of exposed targets. Anything that is exchange on-prem that's exposed to the internet was basically vulnerable to this. And this is all the way up to 2019, which is also crazy.
They might even have at this point how in a movie when they're robbing something, they always know how long a police response time is going to take. Yeah. So they know the alarm's going to go off. So they may actually have some modeling of how long does it take Microsoft to respond to this, and it's going to get out in the press and everybody's going to know about it.
What you hope is that they don't have malware on the systems or monitoring the systems of the people who would notice the 0 day.
Yeah.
And in monitoring the communications going, hey, we're using this set of 0 day exploits, and their intel is basically saying, hey, we're catching wind that someone's noticing that there's access to these systems, and they're noticing that now it's a 0 day and starting to get some attention, so the jig is up. And the reason they know that is because they have intel on the people who would notice these 0 day exploits.
Call the North Koreans.
At Microsoft, right? Or I'm very concerned, much like we covered a couple of weeks ago, that threat actors are going after the people who are discovering the 0 day exploits, right? It behooves them to go after the people who may observe behavior and go, wait, the only way they would be able to accomplish that is if they were to have a 0 day exploit for a vulnerability that we don't know about. Then you start chatting about it, maybe within Microsoft or some other company, right, and going, yeah, we're kind of noticing this, but that communication is being observed by the attackers, much like the U.S. is trying to observe communications on threat actors in other countries. that's how you get advanced. That's the best intel to have.
You got insiders too. You may have insiders at Microsoft that say, "Look, here, you're going to get $500 in your mailbox every month. Only thing you ever have to do is if you see something about this, you pick up the phone and you say, New Year's Day, and hang up, and that's it. And then
or it's the other way around. We've got insiders in those groups that are going, the team I'm with, and there's $500,000 in my bank account because I'm like, this group has a 0 day for these 4 things in exchange, and I'm tipping you off on that. Right? I think Jeff, you talk about espionage and about how it's an age-old tradecraft that could be largely what we're seeing here in the threat landscape within cybersecurity.
I think so.
You think?
It sure looks that way to me. I mean, they're just applying stuff they learned in kinetic spying.
Same game.
It's the same game. Field. It's just it's like instead of Bond having like a car with machine guns under the lights, it's just Mr. Bond doing this kind of stuff. So it's the same stuff.
I like that we can theorize about things like that. Also, critical infrastructure, Rockwell Automation software has, and I believe we're all talking about the same flaw here in logic controllers or PLCs. What I gleaned from this was essentially static keys that were in use on these PLCs.
Yep.
That if you could obtain, it didn't sound like you could just obtain the key. You had to obtain the key and then derive something from the cryptographic protocol or authentication protocol, and with that knowledge, you could gain access to these PLCs. Did I understand that correctly?
That's the way I read it.
Yep.
I was thinking it was the equivalent, though. If you're going to decrypt with it's always the same encryption key, it's not so hard, but you got to get at that encrypted traffic. But what the hell are those PLCs doing exposed?
That's not uncommon, though, right?
Not anymore.
PLCs are like that.
Well, used to it would. If you'd asked that question 20 years ago, I would have said, "Yeah, what are they doing exposed?" But today, everything's exposed because they've started exposing it. The OT is touching the internet because it has to. Now you got controllers that have to have internet access. Because the operator may not actually be local. I mean, that's one of the big sales pitches from all this stuff. Is like reduce the number of operators. You can centralize them, put them all in Augusta, Georgia, and they're all sitting there managing all your PLCs all over the world, but they got to have internet access to do that.
But they're secure because they've got cellular backhauls, and
of course they are.
That's right, and they've probably got like cheap NAT firewalls on them and stuff.
Of course they do.
Or they could be like the one I saw where the firewall was sitting on a table, but the cable to it was just wrapped around the firewall and then went straight into the network. And I said, that's not how the firewall works, guys. It doesn't. And he was like, "Oh yeah, when we plug the firewall in, nothing works, so we just bypassed it with the cabling." And I'm like, "Well, at least you have a firewall, and it's plugged in." I mean, it was like, well, why is this even here then? They were required to have a firewall.
I embedded a link in my number 4 story to the Rockwell secure model, so at least you have some idea of how the layered security should work around these things. I remember when I was first scanning networks, if I scanned a PLC, if I just did a port scan on a PLC, I'd knock it on its ass. So you have to be real careful around it.
Rockwell's been pretty good in security. Tyler?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, most of the PLC manufacturers
have upped their game,
it fairly seriously.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if they're deployed properly in the proper Purdue level and they've got the proper segmentation, usually it's not as big of an issue as a lot of places make it. When you start to talk about OT and how OT relates to the Purdue levels and where these PLCs typically live within inside the field, the internet's usually not even a concern. The business network and the business network's connection for data analytics and things like historians, that's where it starts to get really interesting, and it ties back that, I mean, it's a business. They have to have analytics. They have to know how much power they're producing. There's bids by different companies that have access into those networks to see those so they can bid on that power at a certain price during generation times. And so all of those kind of play into that access, but when configured properly, it's usually not a big deal.
Now, it was quoted in one of the articles that I linked to that the researchers from Clarity, who is a ICS security company, they notified Rockwell of this vulnerability in 2019, and Rockwell did not disclose until Thursday. On the surface, that may seem bad, but maybe public disclosure wasn't until this week, but since Rockwell has learned about it, they've been working with their customers to make sure that their stuff is secure, and the security fixes seem kind of dicey. Like there wasn't necessarily a patch or something because of the nature of the flaw. They have to be able to.
There's only certain maintenance windows on a lot of these places, and they have lifetime maintenance models that they have to adhere to by contract. And so, in order to roll this out,
they have maintenance windows.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I mean, within a year, maybe they might have a 1 week blackout period, and literally all things that need to be changed and all things that need to be updated or fixed can only happen within that week, and that is a legitimate thing that we've run into.
And I've often found with systems like that your maintenance window is when the shit is down anyway.
Yeah,
like. Power's out anyhow, so we might as well just apply some patches while we're at it because stuff is down. How many times have we been in that situation?
But the problem is that like that, in some of these cases, they need to be able to ready to spool back up instantaneously when the power is ready to come back up.
Yeah.
So they can't be waiting, and maybe they're also supplying power to other markets. But yeah, and Tyler, to your point, like maybe they have that week for that maintenance window, but that PLC isn't the only thing that needs to be serviced during that maintenance window. Like, maybe you have bearings on a turbine that you need to replace that takes priority over the something else, and we might not get to that maintenance window on that PLC for 2 years.
And I'm telling you, they're getting into that maintenance window situation now too, where they have to be connected to the internet during the maintenance window because they're downloading stuff and things like that. So in some ways, the maintenance window may actually be a bigger threat than the normal operations cycle where they have isolated OT, and during the maintenance window, they say, oh yeah, we're downloading a whole bunch of stuff, and that's when the historian gets infected and the historian's trusted into the OT or something like that. So I mean, it's a huge issue, but I agree with Tyler that if the Purdue model is in place the way it's supposed to be, it's fairly safe. It's just when you start punching, like anything, when you start punching holes in it is when it starts degenerating, and you end up with a big mess.
I mean, it's scary when we talk about critical infrastructure, and I think there's a lot of certainly literary works that like to theorize about its potential effects, and they vary in degrees of accuracy and storytelling abilities. Certainly, we've talked about a lot of books here in the show, ones we like, ones we maybe don't like so much. I actually started reading Nicole Perlroth's book, This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends. And I couldn't get, to be honest with you, like I couldn't get through it for a whole bunch of reasons, some of which I didn't really realize until people that I know and trust in the industry also kind of came to the same conclusions. Robert Graham is certainly someone in the industry that I wholeheartedly respect. And again, it's not all bad. I think all of us that have read some or all of Nicole's book have come up with different takeaways, not 100% bad. However, we all kind of have our things that are in line that we like to pick apart in the book. And I'm not the only one that finds it kind of horrible on a lot of levels. And Robert did get through the whole thing. I could not. I had to stop reading when basically I felt like it was an attack on our industry. And I'm okay with you. If you want to attack our industry, I'm okay with that. I respect your opinion. But when it's so one-sided that you're also not talking about the positive things that happen in our industry, that's when I just have to tune out. And I'm like, I don't know where you're going with this and what the end goal is. But yes, there's things that we can...
using that journalistic fact voice, right? Like the journalistic fact voice that definitively says this is how it is without doing enough research and or countering with, what the caveats to that are.
Right. It's like pointing out that, there's not enough diversity in cybersecurity without talking about all of the efforts we have to promote diversity in our industry. And I'm not saying there isn't a problem with diversity, because there certainly is. But there's also people like myself and all of us on the show and many of us listening that are working to create more diversity in this industry. And that's one thing I didn't appreciate. Also, there's just glaring things that just flat out aren't true in the book that not only were pointed out by myself when I listened to the book, as well as Robert Graham, but as well as Halvar Flake's review, which I also linked to, points out several more inaccuracies. In addition to, Halvar captured it directly, and I think it was something that was in the back of my mind that I couldn't quite verbalize, and it was hyperbole. It was like sensationalizing things for the sake of sensationalizing things and taking away that there's both sides to that thing you're sensationalizing, right? Like saying that the U.S. has more cyber weapons than everyone else and is more advanced, or even the opposite, or whatever it was. Like those polarizing statements inside of this work, I think, is what a lot of people are taking issue with. So the fact that two people who I respect have also pointed out inaccuracies, and a lot more has been said on other forums about this book. I don't think it's a positive thing. First of all, being able to protect our critical infrastructure and improve our cybersecurity as a nation, but also promote what is good and working on what is good and what we're improving upon in the industry. But I'm kind of torn. Like now that I say that, like, are people going to go listen or read the book because we're talking about it?
But that's what sells newspapers too.
It might be what sells it, and I do want you to read it and form your own opinions as well. And having, I am an author, and maybe I'll write a book someday too. But I guess I do encourage that people do read it or listen to it and form your own opinions. I don't want to form your opinion for you. I do also want to say, before I turn it over to others for commentary, I don't know if you guys have read the book or not, but David Sanger was Nicole's colleague at, is it the New York Times? I believe it's the New York Times. Yeah. And he wrote a book called The Perfect Weapon. I like that book. I didn't have any issues with that book. I didn't 100% fact check everything in David's book, but from what I listened to, I thought it was pretty good. I thought he did a pretty good job of writing a book. I was informed, entertained, and I liked his take. One of the things I liked about David Sanger's book was he recounts word for word his interviews with President Trump at the time. And I was like, oh, okay, like, and he can have his commentary on that, and that's his opinion, and I respect that. But the fact that you could listen to his transcript, like, those were the questions that were asked. That was President, even before he was president. That was his response, and you can form your own opinions about that. I thought that was a great thing to put into a book. You let people form their own opinions.
That's a good book. Yeah, I like that book.
And I thought it was good.
So I think I just missed something that you were talking about diversity in the cybersecurity industry. What did I miss, Paul? Just refresh me. I was distracted.
Nicole was talking about experiences she had going to conferences with people who, not only that I know, but like people I've worked for, and it just kind of painting that in a negative light. And I'm like, the people that you went out to dinner with that you described, this is when I had to stop listening. I'm like, they're good people. And like, not only that, like, they weren't talking about Brazilian jiu-jitsu. They, like, I know they were into rock climbing, like, in other things. Like, it was not my experience with and again, she talked about people who, not only that I know, like, I've worked for those people, and I have a great working relationship with those people. And it was just not my opinion of those people. And she had a different opinion, and I thought it was wrong. No, I mean, not that her opinion can be wrong, but I didn't have the same opinions as she did about that.
I just want to make a couple of quick comments, and they're driven based on my recent experiences. So we did a little bit of work on the diversity issue at Black Hills, really in the Wild West Hackenfest side of the house where we're training. And what we discovered looking at the demographics is the diversity issue in cybersecurity, the most underrepresented demographic group is women. Flat out, right? I mean, that's a fact right now. And so, slight humble brag here, but whenever I train, I am giving money to groups that support women in cybersecurity. That's my charitable contribution. Right. And I encourage others, like, do something about it. If you are aware of something and you want to get active, then get active.
Yes. And I think that was my issue, Joff, is that, you're making a conscious effort to improve that in your actions. We are as well. We want to bring people like that on the show. We want to bring women's groups on the show like we have in the past and will continue to do. And that was something that it was like that one-sided kind of painting the picture of like, oh, there's a diversity issue, but not talking about things that you're doing, things that we're doing, things that others are doing to promote diversity in the field. That was my issue. Yeah.
Exactly. And there's by the way, there is a lot of great, I'm not going to promote any particular one, but there's a lot of great groups out there that are promoting training for girls at young ages in cybersecurity, training for women, changing careers into cybersecurity. Yes. So you just have to get in contact with these people and actually start supporting them.
We've had many of them on the show, and we'll continue to have them on the show.
I was going to say, we talked to, oh my God, Miss Doggy. What's her first name?
Chloe.
Chloe. We talked to Chloe. She's a classic example. She's got a group out in San Francisco that's actually supporting this, and there's plenty others around the country.
Absolutely. So again, read the book, form your own opinions, but continue to evangelize the good things that are happening in the industry, and continue to promote fact.
So and continue to do good things.
Yes.
Paul, you mentioned the book, and I shortly thereafter went and bought it on Audible. And like, I was hesitant at the time just because you'd kind of given it a bad rap a little bit, and now I'm seeing all these other reviews about the hyperbole and just the reading people wrong, and
it's not all bad. I should say it is not all bad.
But it's not. I'm going to go listen to it. But as we're sitting here, I'm like, is there any way that I can return this book on Audible? Because I almost feel bad for giving the publisher money and her and her royalties for my purchase. But I'm in it now. She's got the money, or she'll have the money, and might as well read it.
Listen to it and form my opinions.
I'll tell you what, Larry, send it to me when you're done with it. So we've only spent the money once.
Can you do that with Audible? I wish you could. You can do that with a physical book, I know, right?
Yeah. Maybe I can gift. I'll look into that, see if I can gift it to you. More options. Give as a gift.
Turn it on and leave the Zoom channel open.
There you go.
Somewhat related.
Export as MP3.
Larry can read the whole book into Zoom. So
I loved this article. My article number 9: hacking is not a crime, and the media should stop using hacker as a pejorative. I just want to say props to Alyssa Miller.
Yes.
She was on episode 186 of Enterprise Security Weekly. I love Alyssa. She's awesome. Awesome interview, and just she's doing great things in our field. One of the things she's doing is helping us reclaim the term hacker, right?
And pejorative, Paul. That's a really big word.
It's a big. Alyssa's way smarter than I am. She uses word. I mean, so I just want to read a snippet from her monologue on. She says, using the term hacker to describe cyber criminals is an unfortunate habit that plagues modern media. The accompanying imagery of hoodie-clad individuals hunched over computer displays in darkened rooms exacerbates the issue. The predominance of associating hacker with cyber criminals has exploded as cyber attacks and breaches have become regular topics in mainstream media. However, using hacker in such a pejorative manner is perilous, both for its lack of precision and the counterproductive impact it can have on society. I could not have put it any better myself. Very, very well.
There you go.
Well put. I mean, I don't know that I have anything right. And there's Larry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Enabling stereotypes as we
enabling stereotypes. But I mean, bravo. I could not have put it better myself.
So done, early last year, before COVID, I actually sat in a bar with Alyssa and had a few drinks, and it was one of the best conversations I've ever had. Alyssa, if you're listening or if you listen later, it was great to sit with you. And she's just a fun person and really driven and doing great things in the industry. So
yeah, and really captured, I think, what many of us kind of hold true to our ideals and beliefs about the term hacker, and summarized it well. So make sure to go read that article and continue this narrative.
I have to confess, Paul, when you had the teaser about the term hacking, I assumed that you were going to be talking to Phil about that, because he's one of the founders of Hacking is Not a Crime.
Yes.
Along with Chloe. I didn't realize it was a news story because we didn't talk to him about that.
I know,
at all.
we should have, Jeff. Yeah.
It's a missed opportunity. And so I apologize for not nudging you about that.
Well, we'll just have Philip back. So,
yeah.
or on a different show.
Chloe, I just got to say this real quick. Chloe, if you listen to this show later, I'm so sorry I forgot your first name.
Yeah. All right, that's the second time you've done it, Jeff. If you're talking to somebody, they're listening to the show now, not later, regardless of when it is. Think about
it. Chloe, I'm right there with you, Chloe. You know it.
Well, Jeff, you did a great interview on Security and Compliance Weekly. You had, now I can't remember his name. He went by so many different monikers. Corrupt.
JT.
And the folks from
John Lee.
And
the folks from Hacker Valley
Studio. I thought also captured kind of that hacker spirit as well. That was a great interview, by the way. I did listen. I thought it was awesome.
And the term hacker originally meant like a programmer or an engineer who solves problems. It was not.
It goes back to PDP-1s and model trains in MIT.
It got co-opted, because of Hollywood and all this stuff. And
but Jeff, I just wanted to talk briefly about that episode because I thought it was really one to point out to our listeners.
I knew you'd like to. It was one of our better ones.
It was. It was really good.
And I knew you would love it when he started talking hip hop.
And I loved his angle on hip hop. That early hip hop artists were really kind of hacking music essentially, right? In many different ways. It was a great parallel.
Well, and that so that sort of touches on, Doug just said the term hacker has been co-opted, and it's been co-opted so many times I've lost count. And back, I used to say 25 years ago, but it's getting closer to 30 years ago, which is very depressing. We had three terms. There was freakers who did the stuff on the phones. There was hackers, the good guys, and there was crackers, the bad guys. And for a minute, we tried to correct people and say, no, we're the good guys. We're the hackers. The crackers are the bad guys. And then it got tired and old and boring, and it's like, why bother? Just go off and think what you want. I guess so part of this is like, ho hum, whatever, black hoodie. I put up a picture. I cleaned my closet over the weekend, and I put up my dozen black hoodies that I've gotten from various conferences. Like, do I lose street cred if I put them on hangers and hang them in a closet?
Yes, you do.
So that's how. That's thank you for somebody finally acknowledging that. I guess I object more to, and I sort of asked the rhetorical question on the Discord while we were interviewing Phil. I mean, is a hacker a pen tester always? Is that their one career path in life? Are pen testers all hackers? And we've had this discussion before. I mean, the whole premise of the book Tribe of Hackers is there's people that are doing amazing things. They're not all the pen testers in this industry. And so I have more objections to the hacking term not being, it's projecting the wrong image. We're good guys, not bad guys. I object more to it being used sort of as an umbrella term for that part of the industry that leads to only one thing. You can be a hacker and do so many things, and it's not even a computer thing at the end of the day.
It's not.
No, it's not. Yeah. No, I agree with you, Jeff. It's overused, overapplied in a poor, negative sense by media. I think too often. I suppose it's up to us to step up and explain. Guys, there's a distinction here. I would love to see, and maybe we can volunteer Dave Kennedy for this, by the way, because he loves going on CNN and stuff. Maybe we could have somebody step up and say, let me give you some definitions about what the good guys are doing in the industry and what we call ourselves, and start there, and then sort of pan out from there.
I think
to the shadier parts of the industry.
A pen tester is a hacker, but a hacker's not necessarily a pen tester.
I agree.
Because there's people on the blue team. There's people outside of computers and technology that are certainly hackers, and that term, yes, applies to some of what we do, but also applies outside of what we do. And I think we need to make sure that preserve that.
In that sense, Paul, I mean, think of all the hacker conferences that glorify dropping an O-Day live, talking about the latest cool thing you've done. We are just as guilty as the media, we in the what we call
abusing the term.
community.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a blanket abuse of the term that we need to correct.
That was kind of what I mentioned to Philip earlier too, was about how when you're teaching classes and things, it's very easy to sort of slip into this like, haha, this was something I did, and let me tell you about this. And everybody, perks up because they want to hear, stories about exploits and, I was able to do this. So I think we have that's a place where that kind of stuff starts, and you sort of glorify the idea of it, because I think we all kind of glorify that idea of the black hat hacking stuff, even if we don't mean it that way. But there was a brief period when they started trying to call white hat hackers whackers. Did not fly.
Well, What could possibly go on? You should go watch Security and Compliance Weekly, episode 62, where we interview John Lee. And I had such a great time talking to him off air. I probably talked to him longer off air than I did on air, just because we're from the same generation. I mean, we're, call me an OG, whatever. But, I mean, we were hacking in the, late 80s, early 90s. So, we just sort of were on different sides. But that was kind of fun, because I was like, we probably have been to the same places, just not at the same time, same reasons.
Not wearing the same collar hat, but he addresses that in the interview.
He addresses that, and that's what I wanted to pick up on, because Doug mentioned it. He's like, forget the white hat, black hat. I'm a hacker, and I'm kind of the same mind. I don't need a qualifier. I'm a hacker. I identify as a hacker. I haven't broken into a computer in over 15 years. But I still identify as a hacker, and I don't have terms.
My only issue with the interview is I just wish you had a warning about use of foul language. I don't care that there was foul language used. However, like myself and many others, you might be listening in the car with your children, and you just need to know that there's foul language.
The producers of the show could add something at the beginning of it.
When I was in the car with my child, there was all the foul language was coming from me. So.
Right? Yeah. And then depends on the age of your children.
It's all coming from his middle kid, but that's another story.
Mostly the wife. I mean, he learned that from the wife, not me. Yeah, so if you're going to go back and listen to the interview, just note there is foul language. Again, there is a lot of it, but it's not offensive. You just need to know that, and I want to allow our audience to make that decision as to the setting that you listen to.
But let me say one more thing, Paul. We're sitting here calling it foul language. I mean, you're somewhat familiar with the hip hop culture and where the origins are. It was not foul language. No. It was the language of the street.
Yeah, it was. There is a definite distinction between the different types of language. There was curse words used, but it was not.
There were curse words,
not in an offensive manner, so to speak.
I feel awful now because I think I'm the source of a lot of that foul language. So sorry, kids.
Yeah, it happens.
And the irony in Jeff's comments that he says he didn't need labels, yet he called himself an LG, and I just call him old. So.
Yeah, I
don't like that term OG. I really don't like that term OG. Right? Tyler told me that.
Well, when you get old enough, you're too damn young, Joff.
No, I thought it was original gangsta. That's
what I thought it was.
Oh, there we go. Now we're talking.
It wasn't old. It was original.
Oh gosh,
original gangsta.
Yeah. So
there we go.
Original sounds a lot better than old.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
I didn't call myself OG first. Other people call me OG. I'm just repeating.
Fair.
There you go.
Fair enough.
Okay, there is a complimentary side of that, right? I'm going to throw Tyler under the bus again. Because I love him so much. He actually came to my town one time, and I came over to a party that he was at, and we hung, and he called me a legit OG. That's much more complimentary.
Wow.
Right?
As opposed to those fake OGs.
He must have been really drunk.
Yeah, he was pretty plastered.
I do want to say...
where did Tyler go? Is he still here?
He's there. He's sitting over there. He's got that look that he has when he calls you legit OG.
He knows.
But Tyler, my story number 11, I think, is near and dear to your heart in being able to glean information from photos. And I think it's kind of an interesting transition. This is a hacker thing that we as hackers may look at an image and go, hey, what information can I glean from that? How can I be creative in analyzing what's in that photo to collect information that could be, I mean, we don't want to phrase it as like used against that person, but could derive information that could be used for attacks. And we as, I think, ethical hackers, right, kind of take that as a warning to people to say, hey, when you share photos online or via Zoom calls or whatever conferencing technology you're using, be mindful of what is in the background, because us as ethical hackers may message you privately and go like, hey, there was something in that photo that, like, it may seem innocuous to you, but other people could use that for harm. There are other people who are not ethical that are just going to use that for harm without telling you. Yeah. And my article number 11, I don't remember where it was picked up by a threat post and others, talks about the analysis of images of home working environments and how they've revealed work email inboxes, internal emails, names of people, private web pages, and sensitive information. Joff, what's funny, and everyone that posts pictures in Discord, you posted a picture of your microphone on your desk. And like I was analyzing, because I had just read the story, so I was analyzing it, and there was dental flaw.
You don't look at the foreground. You look at
everything
else.
In the background, right? There it is. Yeah. There's the dental floss, right? Joff's holding it up. Hold it up again for the camera. There was dental floss. And I'm like, oh.
I am very serious about my dental health.
There you go. Joff's root password is Oral B.
There you go. Right? But
he's an OB hacker.
Yeah, Joff did one of these not that long ago, and he had the keys to his truck sitting on the desk, and I'm like,
you mean these?
Zoom.
Oh, we have you now.
Enhance.
We got you now, right? You can reproduce a key.
Yeah, from a picture. Yeah,
from a picture. So there's things that we as hackers derive from these images that folks may not realize that aren't in security or technology that are possible from.
We were telling people that a long time ago doing audits, and just like I literally got network passwords with a telescope. Yep. We were looking at the windows of the building from across the street, and we saw people had passwords.
It's an education thing. My wife she loves to do home improvement projects. That's her hobby. And have totally embraced it. She likes to just do all kinds of home. She follows people on Instagram that are doing home projects, and she knows from being married to me and with me for so long that every time she posts a picture to social media, she's looking in the background to make sure there's nothing in the background that may disclose any kind of personal information about ourselves. And I have to say, props to my wife. She's done a great job of doing that. It's not easy, because we also now have to monitor our kids' social media accounts, and we both follow our kids on social media, whether it's TikTok or YouTube or Instagram. I mean, they have accounts. We want them to have access to technology. We educate them. But I'm like, dude, like, what's in the background? And every once in a while, I'm like, dude, you got to take that down. Like, because there's something in the background that may be used against us, and although maybe unlikely, got to take that one down, right? And it's interesting. How do we get the general public to be in tune with that? I think as we're seeing this article is, how do we get people to be mindful of that? That's super hard.
I've pointed it out to people in Zoom meetings when they had stuff like that. Yeah. And I think just all out of band, I just like texted them and said, I just want to let you know that, like, people capture these things. They've got endless time to scrutinize these things after the fact. Yeah. And I said, I know not everybody thinks this way, but to me, it's like a magic show. You're always trying to look where they don't want you to see what's going on. And I was like, you really need to look at your background, because in your background, I can see.
Like your pet came in frame, but they have a collar with what the pet's name is, and now I'm going to start guessing passwords.
Or just even, pictures of your family and stuff like that. I mean, or the name of your kid's school. I saw the other day, I pointed to somebody and said,
favorite sports team.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking passwords. I was thinking more like physical threats. I was like, you realize that there was 100 people in this meeting, and in the background, you can see your whole family with your kids' names in the picture and the name of the school they're attending, because they had like a school photo hanging there.
But a lot of decor in the home gets really personal. Like, I had a serious conversation with my wife when she, made up a picture with all of the significant dates, right? Date we got married, dates we were born, dates our kids were born. And
I have all that.
But like it's hanging in our home. And I'm like, that can never be posted online. Right. That could never be in frame in a picture, right? So it's like in a hallway in a place you would never take a picture. But like, we think that way. How do we get everyone else to think that way? And
you just have to point it out. I mean, you have to teach them.
When my kids were teenagers, we went through much the same discussion with pictures that they would put in their Facebook pages. Be sensitive about not only the background but what you're wearing, locations. All the stuff that you can identify.
Take your degrees down.
Yeah, take your degree. Exactly.
I'm in lots of meetings with professors, and you look in the background, they got all their college degrees hanging there on the wall. I'm like, oh, you went to there, you went to there, and you went to there. I know where you went to school, and I'm just
wait. Let me turn my background off.
I mean, sometimes it works to the good because people shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at I got to be careful what I say, but like an insurance claim, and you find the people's social media. And you find that what they've posted actually hurts their case, not helps it.
Oh, yeah.
And in that case, I'm like, that can be a positive thing. That can uncover and certainly help with fraud cases, right? So in one case, it can help uncover fraud, right? Mm-hmm. But in some cases, it can be used by
It was something we did when we were doing PI work, was to go to their social media pages. Because you got a person, we had a person, he said, I'm permanently disabled. I can no longer work. I need this big settlement. And one of the first things this PI guy I was working with, I was doing PI training, and he said, how can we find this out? And I said, let's go to his MySpace page. And we went there, and guess what? He's got pictures of him playing golf.
Pictures and videos that I have.
He had a water skiing picture.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, come on. We were looking at the dates on it, and the guy was like, these could be old. And I'm like, no, look, the date's right there. It was like last week. The guy, after he was hurt, he said he's water skiing, and he's got a picture of him water skiing. And
people love to share things about their lives on social media.
Oh, yeah.
And in this case, it's good because you uncover fraud. Yeah.
Lee's got a
and that's how we find a lot of the missing persons things. Like I was working on something this weekend for a missing persons case, and social media right now is so prevalent. Like even if you have physical access to accounts and cell phones, like there's little details within inside of that can actually turn a case pretty quickly. And so it does have some good, but that also is a privacy concern. I mean, we use it all the time for getting badges, understanding what network software you're using in an environment, looking at, people share their screens all the time. We end up with like competitors' bids because someone shared their screen and didn't do it right. Like these are things you have to think about and take care as you're messing around. That's the first thing we all look at is like what's in the background, what's available.
Lee's got a comment here.
Lee, then Jeff.
Okay.
So what I was actually going to say two things. One is when it comes to backgrounds without the virtual, don't forget these are great reflecting surfaces.
Yep.
For reflecting your monitors. And we've had some conversations about that on the show. But the other thing is that, and I'm sure Jeff remembers this too from his employment, I don't think there's enough conversation about OPSEC, operational security, in the workplace. And it's not just for the government sector. It's really, particularly with all of this stuff, there's so much gets revealed on IT. Even when we were working in the offices, I mean, you got the whiteboard in the background that has all the details about the latest project, which probably isn't open source information. So I just keep saying, we got to teach people about OPSEC and use the term.
I got busted on the eyeglasses. Somebody said I can. I was in a meeting and a guy said I can see that you're not paying attention because he could see what I was doing on the other screen.
So I want to
hold on, Jeff.
I thought I was next.
Okay. Go ahead.
I was going to say, this reminds me of, remember in the old days where you used to fly on airplanes? All the times I sit and watch what people are working on next to me, across the road from me on their laptops, with or without a privacy screen. They don't work. And I have always made it it was a personal decision I made. I can't say I don't ever, but I very rarely do work on an airplane or in a public place, just because I know if I was looking at me, I'd be reading the screen, and I don't want to bring customer data up in front of the screen. What it also, just a quick story, back when I was working the PCI assessment for Heartland Data Systems, they were the payment processor that was breached back in 2008, 2009. One of the things that I discovered when I was just sort of doing I didn't call it OSINT back in the day. We used to call it recon. But the guy that was there, I want to say he was their CIO, was running for local office, like a state representative, county board of whatever. So he had a website set up, and on his website he talked about all the cool stuff he did at Heartland Payment Systems as a CIO, and all the cool technology that they were employing at Heartland, including network devices, network gear, firewalls. He was giving version numbers of stuff, and I'm like, holy shit, it's like a roadmap. So, if I was the bad guy, this would be very useful information. And I sent an email out about it to my team because, I was working with people that aren't from the dark side. And I said, there's this thing called, operational security. And, look at all the stuff that you can get. You got to be careful what you put out there. One more story, and then I'll shut up. In the early days, back when I was talking to the Department of Justice about doing their security assessment before the incident, talking about,
we know the incident.
Watch the interview. We went down for an initial meeting with the managers of the IT group and assistant secretary, deputy, whatever, big titles, big huge conference rooms, wooden desks and everything. And I had looked up, and back then I'm not talking Google people, I'm talking like Gopher databases, Archie databases, bulletin boards and things like that. But I went out on the internet to see what I could find out about this, muckety muck suit that we were going to be meeting with. And I discovered that he was the member of a car club. I won't even say what kind of, I'm not naming his name, I'm not going to say what kind of car, but he was the member of a car club. So we're down there having the meeting, and they're like, well, going through all the details, should we really talk to you? You're NSA, and I know you can help, but do we really want to do this, and so on and so forth. And we sort of came to terms and decided on the game plan. After the meeting was over, I walked up to him and I said, you still got that red such and such 19 whatever year car? And he was like, how did you know? And I'm like, I'm a hacker, dude. Anyway, that's it.
That's a good definition of hacker.
Yep.
I was writing a forensics case on an airplane one time, and this guy next to me apparently was watching me write this forensics case.
Well, that was me. That was me.
Well, when I got off the plane, there was a law enforcement officer standing there, and he was like, can we speak to you for a minute? And I was like, sure, what's up? And he was like, we'd like to take a look at your laptop. And I was like, okay, why? And he was like, someone on the plane told the flight crew that maybe you were doing some bad things, and that, and then I was like, oh, it's a forensics case. And I was like, yeah, no, see, these aren't child porn pictures. They're like pictures of cats. They're not real. And the word child porn was on the screen a lot, but. And then I showed him on my ID, and he was like, "Oh yeah," and but it was. You
realized you were working for law enforcement.
It made me want to do really funny ones to open up on airplanes,
right?
That would probably get me put in jail, but I haven't done those.
so I'd like to make one comment really quick. And the other thing about OPSEC that people are not paying enough attention to today is the COVID times. We've all switched to a lot of video conferencing, and I have numerous times watched people share screens and not focus it on a particular window or just and email listings come up and all sorts of terrible OPSEC moves.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm very conscious about that.
Have you noticed it's not always what's on your screen at the time you're sharing it, but what can pop up while you're sharing your screen? Because every application wants to give you some type of information when it comes in, right? And that could be Slack, that could be Discord, that could be email, that could be any number of things.
Don't share full screen, share an application.
Right? That's my issue with sharing your screen.
Yeah, so
to the
my
point
guidance,
where I just turn off all notifications on all applications on all my systems, because I'm like, I could be sharing my screen, or during a broadcast, I just shared my screen during this broadcast, right?
I try to shut everything off I can, and notifications, pop-ups. What do you call it? One more story. What do you call it when you're on a Zoom meeting and you're you're doing an interview with the network engineer, the firewall engineer, and you're asking him to log into the firewall, and so you watch him crack open Notepad,
copy and paste the password.
Scroll down a list of passwords.
Oh yeah,
you call it a travesty.
Have you ever seen the one? Have you ever seen the one in class?
Screenshot that.
Where the professor is got a big screen in class, and they start to log into the system, and they get the wrong box, and they're typing their password on the username line. I've seen that so many times, and you're just like, I literally went up after the class I was sitting in on, and I was like, you might want to make a note that you typed your password on that main line. You may want to change that because that's probably your password for everything, right? And he was like, you could see that? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to reiterate, though, if you're on Zoom calls, just good general guidance, everybody. Don't share the whole screen. Share a specific application.
Yeah, absolutely.
And turn off all unnecessary applications if you need to, like shut them down. That should be standard practice. That's good offset.
If you're sharing PowerPoint, put it in damn presentation mode, because if you don't, you're losing half the screen.
Yeah.
Just a pet peeve.
I want to call it a couple of other stories. Qualys was hit with a ransomware attack, and Qualys is a sponsor. Also, sponsor or not, I don't blame SolarWinds necessarily for the hack. Like, we're all susceptible. We all have software. All software has vulnerabilities. All companies have some. The pen testers in the room and that are listening can attest that all organizations in some shape, form, or fashion have some type of security vulnerability. So sponsor or not, everyone is susceptible.
Don't forget we all got layer 8 vulnerabilities too.
Yeah, and exactly. We talked about social engineering as totally a part of hacking, and that's totally a thing. I do want to highlight and go to. I have not spoken to anyone at Qualys about this, but I want to pull from their official statements. Ben Carr has issued some statements and said that Acelion was the vendor that what I garner from this is that it was software to be able to share files, right? And we've all seen software that allows you to share communications and or files with the organization. Acelion is a platform to do that. Qualys discovered that there was a vulnerability on December 21st and patched it on December 22nd of 2020. And I think that's you can't ask for any better response,
that's nice.
From a company. So Qualys, and there were a couple of other things in the article that I was like, well, Qualys really did like their due diligence. And to translate that to a vendor that is not a sponsor, we also kind of gave props to Rockwell, even though we thought Rockwell had a lot of time that passed. We understood the situation.
Yep.
In the context of that particular, that while it may have took them a while, they were working with their customers to make sure that they had protections in place before they came public with that. So I think that I've been guilty of this in the past, to kind of jump to pointing at the company and or group of people that may be the victim of a breach, but not understanding the whole story. That everyone is susceptible to this.
Hey, a question and a comment, Paul. Were you still at Tenable when Ben Carr worked at Tenable, or had you already left?
Might have just missed each other. I want to say I've interviewed Ben before.
Because I'm like, Ben Carr, I know him.
Yeah.
We worked at
He's a good person.
I would suggest reaching out to Mayhul to get the inside scoop on Qualys.
Yeah, Mayhul works there now. I mean, we have lots of Qualys. I mean, it's a great company, and again, we're all susceptible. And it wasn't Qualys' software, from what I garnered from reading about it, that led to this. It was a supply chain attack, certainly, is what I've garnered from reading about this. I think that it has been sensationalized. Talk about hyperbole, right?
Well,
security vendor Qualys was hit.
They're going to go after security vendors when they get this. But I said this yesterday. I was in a meeting with a bunch of people that I was consulting to, and and somebody said, "Well, we're in pretty good shape." And I said, "Yeah, but just understand, you got to be ready, because you are going to get got. I mean, at some point you're going to get got. Everybody does. I don't care how well off you think you are. Somebody's going to get you. So you need to plan for when it happens."
Absolutely. It's your response that matters. It's your response that matters.
We all do it, but we all forget that all these companies that get popped, they're victims of a crime. regardless, but we tend to focus on the egregious way that they're insecure. It's like, yeah, but they're also a victim of a crime. So temper
Paul,
that.
I got a story I'd love to hit.
Let's do it, Larry.
When we start talking OG and all that type of stuff, one that was kind of fun that I saw. My story number 6, and very descriptively titled Matt Blaze on Twitter. Matt was doing some playing with some software-defined radio and stuff in the greater DC area, but he found that there was a 0.2 watt AM radio station belonging to Washington DC's Department of Transportation on 1650 AM, broadcasting traffic information continuously for the last 8 years about road closures for the 2013 presidential inauguration.
Wow.
Yeah.
No way.
Doing some more digging in, they discovered where they got the call sign. They did some digging into the license that had well expired. One of Matt Blaze's followers, Rob Stumpf, wrote an article for The Drive about it. Did some investigative reporting, actually reached out to the person who the license was issued to, and it went away. It disappeared.
I like in this Twitter thread, Kim Zetter has a great comment. She says, "Seems like a glitch in the Matrix." I couldn't have made any better comment myself. That's great.
And Matt Blaze's comment was very Fallout 3-esque. It had that feel to it. But the one that I thought was kind of fun. And you think about what happened, in the traffic broadcast, and for a big event like that, they will place mobile transmitters around low power mobile transmitters, so folks know what the traffic looks like. And it is likely that one of the low power transmitters was on one of those rolling street signs, that people were hacking, powered by solar, and is sitting unused in some parking lot in the greater DC metro area, and just unused, and no one thought to actually turn it off, and it's being powered by solar this whole time, and it's just sitting there running.
That's awesome.
Now,
years.
Java, it's interesting, unrelated to the story. We talked Kim Zetter, we Countdown to Zero Day, and the respect we have for that work, compared to some of the other books we've talked about.
Did I miss that? I don't think I was on that. Did we actually talk to Kim Zetter on the show?
No, we need to get her on the show, Joff.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We have to. Oh my God! If that is a mission, we need to get Kim Zetter on the show.
Because Countdown to Zero Day was, we fact checked that with our peers 6 Ways to Sunday, right? When we read, we're like, really, was that? And she just did a great job of researching all the facts and putting that together in a very cohesive story. And I will note, without hyperbole, right?
No, it was down the line. Just a fantastic. Look, everybody out there, if you have not read Countdown to Zero Day by Kim Zetter,
must read.
Go get it.
Read it.
It is if you're in this industry, it will open your eyes as really an amazing read.
Great book.
Yep. What else do we have on the list before we round out the show? I want to see if there was another.
Oh, I had one I grabbed, but I didn't get a chance to dive into it. And that was my number 6. NSA publishes guidance on adoption of Zero Trust. We've done a lot of shows on Zero Trust, and I just thought it was really interesting that they're actually coming up with a guidance. And there's a lot of background information, if I remember right, about how prepared you had to be before you didn't just go out and buy and install Zero Trust. I just thought it's a topic we've talked about a lot, and I thought it was an interesting blend of what we talk about. Had you caught that?
Yeah, because I thought Peter did a great job of describing Zero Trust and dispelling some of the myths. And Leah, I agree. I think it's very telling that NSA is also kind of latching onto that message as a way to actually secure things, right? I think is what we've kind of described as hardening and what we were trying to, again, I go back to liken it to Chroot environments, like making sure that processes down to the process level, the processes are only doing what they're supposed to do. And that's really hard. And I think there's some great technologies out there that allow us to accomplish that.
You just have not running the scissors. Go ahead.
What's interesting to Lee. What's interesting to me is the defensive mission of NSA was dissolved several years ago. So I wonder what part of NSA is actually publishing it. But I might know some people. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I also just want to call out if you predicted that the consolidation in cybersecurity was to be happening, that you'd be right. And there was 2 news articles this week that really, in announcements that really brought this home for me. And one is that there is a private equity group that has merged the companies Thycotic and Centrify in the identity space. And on the authentication space, Okta has now bought Auth0. We've certainly, in these 2 events happening in the same week, is hugely telling that there is a consolidation inside of this industry. I don't want it to stifle innovation. I still want to see startups coming into this space. But I think for a lot of the major categories, we are seeing a lot of consolidation.
That's theoretically the standard. That happens in
any
every
growing industry, right? That's the standard.
That's the way. All the business literature will show you that down through history that you have that kind of pattern. That initially it's all innovation, and then it becomes stasis kind of stuff. And it will get harder for startups then because you've got big players who've consolidated, and those big players are going to have more money and more resources and more people, and it gets harder. They get more barriers to entry spring up, and that's the tendency of big players is they don't want competition. They want to say we own it.
They're going to swallow the competition and integrate rather than compete
and they
with
tend
them.
to stifle it too because they see, you've seen this in IT, you saw it in mainframe, and you see somebody like IBM saying, we don't want these new players out there in their garage, so just go buy them out. Go offer them $1 million, and they'll go away, and we'll take their stuff, put it on the shelf, and we don't have to worry about it for another 10 years. So, it's going to happen, and it is. Like you said, you're starting to see that. So you're seeing the collapse of all these little dots into bigger dots,
rather than 20 or 30 players in a given category, right?
You'll get down to 3 or 4. Eventually there'll be these 3 big names, and they kind of drive everything. And there'll always be these people saying, "Hey, let's take them out. Me and you are going to get together and do this." But it creates barriers to entry. So I think you're seeing that now. It's starting to mature.
Absolutely. Great write-up on the AnyDesk remote code execution vulnerability. My story number 14. Look, if you're interested in reverse engineering and or exploit development, go read my story number 14. Just an awesome write-up of not only looking at an application, but looking at how the application operates, looking at fuzzing aspects of that application, how to do that, and just the whole approach to pointing out the flaws and discovering the flaws in a particular piece of software. I thought it was one of the better write-ups that I've seen. I can probably only point to maybe half a dozen of these that come out in a given year that really not only walk you through all the technical details, but also the process of where the person started and where they kind of went from there to find those esoteric flaws that led them to, hey, I got a remote code execution.
I really like that story. I thought that's really cool. It's a great example. If you're teaching classes or something, it's a case study you could present to your students, and this is how this happened. So I think it's a really nice story.
I haven't dug into the hackers release a new jailbreak for almost every iPhone. That was kind of telling. Also some exploitation involved in that.
It only works on version iOS 11 to 14.3. So Apple did patch this, but this was based on a CVE, and so if you have before 14.4, you can have a jailbreak. But,
and just be careful if you're going to jailbreak your iPhone.
I said that when I reported this story.
You can break that shit pretty easily.
I said, if you're going to do this, be sure and do it on somebody else's phone first. So.
Do it on your burner phone.
And I thought my story number 6 was interesting. Several Cisco products exposed to a DOS attack due to a Snort vulnerability. The interesting thing here for me was This vulnerability, they state, this vulnerability was found during the resolution of a support case, and there's no evidence it has been exploited in the wild. Basically, processing of certain packets caused a DOS vulnerability in Snort, which translates to multiple Cisco products that have integrated it.
Yep. That's a malformed packet problem.
When you talk to Marty Resch, as we've done on numerous occasions here on the show over time, he will express the difficulties in parsing, because you're taking air quotes user input, right? Mm-hmm. Data from the network.
That's right.
Is right, very dynamic, right? And you're processing that. Inherently, vulnerabilities are gonna and software issues are gonna arise. And here's
so not only Snort, right? Wireshark has had several issues with this same issue. Of oh my God, we're having to create a buffer, we're having to process data.
Right.
Just that very nature of that software operation is subject to vulnerability. And if you don't do it right, you're going to get in trouble. So Wiresharks have several plugins that have been vulnerable. It's not surprising at all that Snort would suffer from this same issue. And for that matter, while we're on that topic, it's not an IDS, but Zeek might well have the same kind of problem too, because it's doing protocol analysis. So,
also my story number 3: why we need more blue team voices at the table. They state, I'm going to tell you one of the dirty secrets of enterprise cybersecurity. There's a lot of practitioners that secretly wish their company would get hacked, because at least then someone would listen to them. These people tend to reside on what frequently we refer to as the blue team. I'm not sure I agree with all of the statements in this article, but it certainly underscores the problem that we still have today, that if you're on the blue team and you're bringing up an issue that we could be vulnerable to attack, it's harder than you're with the red team and you're like, I just did this attack. And I think that's really the heart and soul of this article, right? Is expressing those challenges that we have. Then on the red team, we could say, yeah, like we did this thing, and like here's your list of all your users and passwords, versus the blue team going, we should really like do this stuff for security. Jeff,
I agree with your sentiment, but I don't think it's just the blue team. It's any security person in the company. If they're doing defense, I guess by definition they're the blue team, but they may be one guy or gal. And they may be screaming from the rooftops, and until something bad happens, because they're not, company's not required to do something because of compliance or regulation. They're just not going to do anything. We've talked about that before.
It's still an issue.
You have to demonstrate this stuff. If you go to the C level and you say they say has it happened, I mean, it's really tough to get traction. That's why.
It's yet another one of my pet peeves, and I've just been in a mood for the last week or two. I apologize, but
bring out the curmudgeon, Jeff. Bring it out.
If you're a security professional, if you're a security expert, whatever, you've got all these certs and experience, whatever. People should listen to you, and if they're not listening to you, you should always be introspective and try to figure out whether somehow you're not presenting the message correctly, or try something different and keep trying something different. But at some point it's got to be on them too. And I very often talk about changing the message and figuring, that's the whole art of the Jedi mind trick. You gotta be heard. But there's also an element of nobody's going to listen to you. And why won't people, they go out and hire security professionals for their organization, but then they don't listen to them. Bugs me.
Not always.
Well, I'm overgeneralizing, but it happens more times than not, I think, Jeff.
Not always, but I do think, I mean, you guys are circling around the very definition of the penetration testing industry, right? Our job is to actually demonstrate and show those risks in real visceral terms that make people pay attention. And if we're not able to do that, then we're not doing our job correctly, because frankly, what we're actually in the process of doing every time we engage in a pen test is not only detecting the vulnerabilities, but exploiting them and demonstrating how they can cause risk and damage to the organization without actually damaging the organization, right? That is the essence of the industry. And if we're not able to communicate that stuff adequately, then, I mean, well, we must be doing that because the industry still exists for, now a pretty good period of time. So there's enough people listening that it is a funded industry.
Well, it's interesting. So Jerry Gamblin is the author of this article, and it says Jerry Gamblin's interest in security ignited in 1989 when he hacked Oregon Trail on his third grade class Apple IIe, which is the platform that I started on. And the Oregon Trail was detailed in the Stephen Levy book, Hackers, Heroes of the Computer Revolution, and detailed I don't remember the name of the software company that made Oregon Trail, but there's a whole background there. Drunken parties at the software company. There's a whole story about Oregon Trail on Apple IIe. It sparks like respect that he can trace his roots back to there. But what Jerry's arguing for, that Jason Albuquerque talks about on Business Security Weekly, is aligning security to the business. And that works in a lot of scenarios, but not all, right? So like if you have an e-commerce website advocating for bot detection, yes, improves security, but also protects the business. We talked about in our tech segment today about RTX 30 series and AMD processors. We can extend that to Xbox Series S and X, as well as PlayStation 5, and the supply chain issue and the challenges that retailers face to combat bots, that they want their products to be sold to consumers, not to people who are going to resell them or use those to mine cryptocurrency, right? That's a business thing. He's like, if you can align security to the business objectives, you've got a much better case. And I find that, and Jason will tell, that aligns in many different aspects, but not always. There's, I think, where the friction comes in is when you're trying to align it to things that are like, we should do this so we don't get hacked and it doesn't destroy the business. That's harder to understand than there's a business benefit as well as some business insurance to it, right?
I disagree with what Jason says because take the Florida water treatment plant from a couple weeks ago. That model's not going to work for them because if they have to do anything to change, they've got to go to the local government to get funding.
I see a great segment, Jeff. You just sparked a great point. We should bring Jason on to talk about how you align security to the business and discuss it with this panel. Because you're right, it doesn't align always. Where does it align? Where does it fall down? And how do we deal with it?
Well, and getting back to the article, your initial statement about, the blue team person is the one screaming, "I wish we would do a pen test." He knows what's wrong with the network, what they need, and is frustrated. So like, okay, they said, we should get popped, or we should be hired to have somebody pop us professionally, pen testing team. Yeah. But companies that aren't listening to their people, they're not going to go out and pay for a JOF to come in and do the pen test. They're going to come in, with the pen test puppy mill, glorified scan at best, and only if they have to.
Yes. There is a.
It sounds good in theory. No, but it doesn't play out in the real world more often than not.
Well, I agree, Jeff. There's a class, a category, a subset of companies that will only do security if they have to.
Right.
It doesn't matter if the pen tester is telling them. It doesn't matter if the blue team, air quotes blue team, right? Like the people who are working for the company, responsible for IT, you can term those a blue team, which I think is kind of a disservice, right? They're working for the greater good of the company. They want to prevent the breaches from happening. But the business isn't going to implement those security controls unless something bad happens. And this something bad happens may not even translate to a red team from our esteemed panel here of pen testers, or from maybe even from external attackers. Who knows?
So there's another piece, though. The other piece is that whoever's asking for the security improvements has to make sure they are aligned with what the business will tolerate. I mean, if you come in saying you gotta update all your struts now in production and there's no time to plan it out, versus some other mitigation. I mean, you got to choose your how you make the pitch carefully.
Yeah. We need to move all our exchange to Office 365. That's a bold statement, Lee, right? You got to back that up.
Yeah. Yeah, and you got to know what that means. That's a big check to write.
Yep.
But I'll tell you, one of my best Jedi mind tricks in my former career as a QSA was going into companies and sitting down with the blue teams, the security people, the IT people, and saying, look, you know what's wrong with your network. You know what you need. What are the things that you've been screaming at your management to invest in and you're not getting it? Because guess what? If I can link it to PCI and make it a gap, guess what you're going to get? Try me. Worked like a charm. And not only did it, I was doing it to build trust and to like get beyond the, you're the stupid auditor, or I don't want to talk to you. It's like, no, we got to go through this. It doesn't go away. But people would come back. It's like, it's magical. All of a sudden we've got the whatever it was that we need. So it's something it's not new. It's something that's been ongoing for a while. And of course, the only reason it worked for me is because there was a compliance requirement. And management, the business model was we want to stay in business and we have to do this PCI thing or else we can't do business. So we're going to do it. And that was the extent of the understanding and caring of executive management. Again, I'm grossly overgeneralizing, but it happened more often than not.
Yeah,
that was the case.
I think we should bring Jason on and have that discussion.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Let's do that.
Yeah,
great.
Well, thank you everyone for listening and watching to this edition of Paul Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
And out.